"You don't belong here," my brother said, his voice as cold as the winter wind that rattled the windows of our family home in Boston. I felt my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces, each shard cutting deeper than any knife ever could. The words hung in the air between us, poisonous and final. 27 years of believing I was Sarah Mitchell, daughter of Eleanor and Thomas Mitchell, sister to David Mitchell. All of it questioned in 6 simple words. Mom's hand trembled as she reached for the dusty photo album on the top shelf of the living room bookcase. Her eyes, usually warm and inviting, now swam with unshed tears. David stood there, arms crossed, jaw set, looking at me like I was a stranger who had invaded his home. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly, marking each second of this nightmare that was unfolding around me. "I found the papers," David continued, waving a manila envelope in my face. "I was looking for Dad's will in his study and found these instead. Adoption papers, Sarah. Or whoever you really are." I couldn't breathe. The room spun around me, the familiar walls of our Victorian home in Cambridge closing in. The smell of Mom's apple pie, which had been baking in the oven, suddenly made me nauseous. Outside, through the bay windows, I could see the maple trees we'd climbed as children, their branches now bare in the November chill. "David, stop it right now," Mom said, her voice cracking with emotion. She clutched the photo album to her chest like a shield. "You have no idea what you're talking about." But David wasn't listening. He was too busy looking at me with those accusing eyes, the same green eyes that matched Dad's, eyes I didn't have. Mine were brown. I'd always thought they were from Mom's side of the family. Now I wasn't sure of anything anymore. "Did you know?" I whispered to Mom, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "All this time, did you know I wasn't really yours?" The silence that followed was deafening. 27 years of memories flashed before my eyes. Birthday parties in this very living room. Christmas mornings by the fireplace. Family vacations to Cape Cod. Was it all a lie? Was I just some charity case they had taken in? "I need some air," I gasped, stumbling toward the front door. My hand was on the doorknob when I heard Mom's voice, clear and firm. "Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell, you turn around right now." I froze. It was her no-nonsense voice, the one that had stopped me from countless childhood misdeeds. But did she even have the right to use that tone with me anymore? Was I even Sarah Mitchell? Slowly I turned. Mom had opened the photo album and was pointing to a faded photograph. "Come here," she said quietly. My legs moved of their own accord, carrying me across the hardwood floors I had played on as a child. The house smelled of lemon polish and history, a history I thought was mine. "Look," Mom said, her finger resting on a yellowed photograph. It showed her, much younger, in a hospital bed. In her arms was a tiny bundle with a shock of dark hair. Me. Dad stood beside the bed, beaming with pride. And there, perched on the edge of the bed with a suspicious look on his 5-year-old face, was David. "That's the day we brought you home from Massachusetts General," Mom said softly. "You were 3 days old." David snorted. "That doesn't prove anything. That could be any baby." Mom flipped to another page. Another photo. This one of Dad holding me on the porch swing, my tiny hand wrapped around his finger. "Look at her hand, David," Mom said. "Look at her left pinky finger." I knew what they would see before they looked. My left pinky finger had a slight curve to it, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Dad had the same curve. It was one of those things that had always made me feel connected to him, especially after he passed away last month. "Coincidence," David muttered, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. Mom closed the album with a snap. "Your father and I were going to tell you both after your 21st birthday," she said quietly. "But then life got in the way. Your father's illness. We just never found the right moment." "Tell us what?" David demanded. "That Sarah isn't really a Mitchell?" Mom's eyes flashed. "She is every bit a Mitchell. More than you're acting right now, David Christopher." I stood there, frozen between the two of them, my world tilting on its axis. Outside, snow had begun to fall, each flake a memory from my childhood drifting down, landing on shaky ground. "I think," I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt, "that someone needs to tell me exactly who I am. My name is Sarah Mitchell. At least, that's what my birth certificate says. I'm 32 years old, a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's Hospital, and until yesterday, I thought I knew exactly who I was. The daughter of Eleanor and Thomas Mitchell, sister to David, born and raised in Cambridge, Massachusetts. A woman who loved New England autumns and hated the humid summers. A woman who had her father's curved pinky finger and her mother's love of classical music. I've spent my life in a comfortable brick townhouse just off Harvard Square, the same house where I grew up. When Dad died of pancreatic cancer a month ago, I moved back in to help Mom sort through his things and keep her company. David lives in New York with his wife, Jennifer, and comes up on weekends when his investment banking job allows. Or at least he did, until yesterday, when he found those papers and everything changed. Mom made us all sit down at the kitchen table, the same oak table where we'd eaten family dinners for decades. The adoption papers lay in the center like a bomb waiting to detonate. David sat as far from me as possible, as if my recently discovered status was somehow contagious. Mom's hands shook as she poured tea into the blue china cups that had been her mother's. "Your father and I tried for years to have a baby after David," she began, stirring honey into her tea. "We had 3 miscarriages. The doctors told us it wasn't going to happen again. We were looking into adoption when Helen came into our lives." "Helen?" I echoed. The name felt strange in my mouth. Helen Graham. She was 19, a freshman at Tufts. She was from Springfield, came from a good family, but they were very religious. When she got pregnant, they gave her 2 options: marry the boy or give up the baby. Mom took a sip of her tea. She didn't love him. He was just some boy she met at a party. I tried to imagine this Helen, this stranger whose blood ran in my veins, a scared teenager, pregnant and alone. "How did you meet her?" I asked. "Through the church. She was staying with the pastor's family until the baby was born. We didn't do a formal adoption through an agency. It was what they called a private adoption. Her parents knew our family through church connections, and when they heard we were looking to adopt, Mom trailed off, her eyes distant with memory. "So I'm not even legally a Mitchell?" My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. "Of course you are," Mom said firmly. "We did everything properly. The papers were all filed correctly. Your birth certificate lists us as your parents. But biologically, I'm not yours," I persisted. There was a strange comfort in saying the words out loud, in facing this new reality head on. I'm the daughter of this Helen person, and some unnamed boy she met at a party. Genetically, yes, Mom admitted, but in every way that matters, you are ours. We raised you. We loved you. We are your parents. David stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I need some air," he muttered, and disappeared into the backyard. Mom and I sat in silence, listening to the tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Through the kitchen window, I could see David pacing in the garden, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked finally. I had a right to know. Mom's face crumpled. "We were going to, sweetheart. Many times. When you were little, we read you books about adoption, tried to prepare you, but you were so sensitive, so attached to us. You'd cry if I even went to the grocery store without you. We were afraid of how you'd take it." I remembered those years. How I'd cling to Mom's legs when she tried to drop me off at preschool. How I'd wait by the window for Dad to come home from work. Had some part of me always known I wasn't truly theirs? Had I been compensating, trying to hold on to them more tightly? And then, as you got older, it just became harder to find the right moment. Your father wanted to wait until you were old enough to understand. Then you were a teenager, and everything was already so emotional. Then you went to college, and we didn't want to disrupt your studies. Each excuse sounded flimsier than the last, and Mom seemed to know it. She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring. "Your father's diagnosis changed everything," she said quietly. "We were so focused on treatments, on hoping, on making the most of the time we had left. Telling you the truth about your birth it didn't seem important compared to that." I understood, in a way. The last 3 years had been consumed by Dad's illness. The initial diagnosis, the surgeries, the rounds of chemotherapy, the brief remission, and then the final decline. There had been no room for anything else. "And now?" I asked. "What happens now?" Mom reached across the table and took my hand. "That's up to you, sweetheart. If you want to know more about Helen, I can tell you what I know. If you want to try to find her, I'll help you. Or if you want to take time to process all this, that's okay too." I looked down at our joined hands, her skin pale and spotted with age, mine younger, but with the same long fingers. Not genetically the same, but shaped by the same experiences. Kneading bread dough together, planting tulip bulbs in the garden, folding origami cranes during Dad's hospital stays. I don't know what I want, I admitted. I feel like I don't know anything anymore. Outside, David had stopped pacing and was staring in at us through the window. His expression was unreadable, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were balled into fists in his coat pockets. "Your brother will come around," Mom said, following my gaze. "He's just shocked. He always been so certain about everything. This has thrown him." I wasn't so sure. The way he'd looked at me, like I was a stranger, an imposter, it had cut deeper than I could express. David and I had always been close despite the 5-year age gap. He'd taught me to ride a bike, had threatened to beat up boys who broke my heart in high school, had helped me move into my first apartment. And now he couldn't even stand to be in the same room as me. "I should go home," I said, standing up. "I need some time to think." Mom's face fell. "This is your home, Sarah." But was it? Had it ever been? I didn't go home that night. I couldn't face the empty apartment, the silence that would allow my thoughts to spiral. Instead, I drove around Cambridge, past the hospital where I worked, past my old high school, past all the landmarks of a life I was now questioning. Eventually, I ended up at Riverside Park, staring out at the frozen Charles River. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Please come home when you're ready. I love you." I couldn't bring myself to answer. Part of me wanted to drive straight to Springfield, to knock on doors until I found a Graham family who might remember a daughter named Helen, who had given up a baby 32 years ago. Another part wanted to pretend none of this had happened, to go back to believing I was simply Sarah Mitchell. No complications. It was after midnight when I finally returned to my parents' house. Mom's house now. The lights were off downstairs, but I could see a glow from David's old bedroom window. He was still up. I let myself in quietly, hanging my coat in the front hall closet out of habit. As I turned toward the stairs, I noticed the adoption papers spread out on the coffee table in the living room. David must have left them there. I hesitated, then sat down on the edge of the sofa and pulled the papers toward me. My hands trembled as I read the formal language, the signatures, my biological mother's shaky scrawl, my parents' more confident signatures. At the bottom of one page was a small inked footprint, my footprint, from when I was 3 days old. "Find anything interesting?" I jumped. David stood in the doorway, watching me with cold eyes. "You scared me," I said, my heart racing. He moved into the room, keeping his distance. "Did you know about this all along?" The accusation in his voice made me flinch. "What? No, of course not. I'm as shocked as you are." Somehow I doubt that. He dropped into the armchair across from me, his posture rigid. "It makes sense now, you know. Why they always treated you differently." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, come on, Sarah, the way Mom and Dad always babied you. The way they came to every one of your school events but missed half of mine because they were too busy. The way they paid for your entire college education but told me I needed to take out loans for part of mine." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "That's not true. They never treated me differently." "Really? What about when you totaled your first car, and they just bought you a new one? When I dented the fender on mine, Dad made me work all summer to pay for the repairs. That was different. I was 17. You were 21. It was always different with you," David spat. "Always some excuse for why you got special treatment. I guess now we know why. The precious adopted daughter, the one they chose." His words hit me like physical blows. This couldn't be how he really saw our childhood, could it? David had always been the golden boy in my eyes. The star athlete, the math whiz, the one who got into Harvard on his first try while I had to settle for Boston University. "That's not fair," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I never asked for special treatment, and I don't think I got it either." "No? Let me ask you something, Sarah. Who's the executor of Dad's will?" I blinked, thrown by the change of subject. I don't know. We haven't done the formal reading yet." "It's you," David said flatly. "Not me, the firstborn son. Not even Mom. You. Dad's little princess gets to decide how his estate is divided. Tell me that's not special treatment." I was stunned. I didn't know. He never said anything to me. "Right." David's laugh was bitter. "Just like you didn't know you were adopted." "I didn't," I protested, hurt and anger rising in my chest. "Why would I lie about that?" "Maybe because you've been lying about everything else." He leaned forward, his eyes hard. Like that job offer in Chicago you turned down last year because you said you couldn't leave Mom and Dad. Was that even real? Or was it just another way to make yourself look like the devoted daughter? The job offer had been real, a prestigious position at Northwestern Memorial that I desperately wanted, but had turned down because Dad's cancer had just been diagnosed. I couldn't believe David would question that. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, tears threatening. "Why are you trying to make me the villain here? I just found out my entire life is based on a lie, and instead of supporting me, you're attacking me." "Because I'm tired of the act, Sarah. I'm tired of watching you manipulate Mom and Dad. Mom now, with your perfect daughter routine. At least now I know you're not really their daughter at all." The words hung in the air between us, impossible to take back. In all our years of occasional sibling squabbles, David had never been deliberately cruel, until now. I stood up, gathering the adoption papers with shaking hands. "I'm going to bed. We can talk when you're not being a complete jerk." "Sure, run away," David called after me as I headed for the stairs. "That's what you always do when things get tough." I paused, my foot on the first step. "That's not true." "No? What about when Dad was dying? Where were you when Mom needed help with his medications? When he needed to be driven to chemo appointments?" "Oh, right. You were too busy at work. Some devoted daughter." I turned slowly to face him. I was working 60-hour weeks at the hospital so I could take a leave of absence during his final months. I was here every day for the last 8 weeks of his life. "Where were you, David?" "Oh, right, you were in New York, calling once a day to check in because you couldn't be bothered to take time off from your precious job." David flinched as if I'd slapped him. "I had responsibilities." "So did I interrupted. "But I was here when it mattered. I held his hand when he died. You didn't even make it back in time to say goodbye." It was a low blow, and I knew it. David had been devastated that his flight had been delayed, that he'd arrived at the hospital 30 minutes after Dad had passed. He'd never forgiven himself for it. "Get out," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "Get out of this house. You don't belong here. You never did." I stared at him. This brother I'd idolized my whole life, now a stranger filled with venom. "Fine," I whispered. "I'll go. Tell Mom I'll call her tomorrow." I turned to leave, but David wasn't finished. "Don't expect much from Dad's will, by the way. I've already called our lawyer. Once he knows you're not really a Mitchell, he'll have to reconsider the terms." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Dad's estate should go to his real family, not some charity case he and Mom took in." In that moment, something broke between us, something I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. Without another word, I walked out into the cold November night, leaving behind the only home I'd ever known. I drove to my apartment in a daze, tears blurring the familiar streets. By the time I unlocked my door, it was almost 2 a.m. I collapsed onto my couch, still clutching the adoption papers. Sleep evaded me. Instead, memories flooded in. Moments with my family that I now saw in a different light. Dad teaching me to ride a bike in the driveway, his strong hands steadying the seat as I wobbled forward. Mom brushing my hair before school, singing softly under her breath. David showing me how to throw a baseball in the backyard, patient despite my terrible aim. Were those moments real? Or had they been performances? Obligations to an adopted child they felt sorry for? I must have dozed off eventually, because I woke to sunlight streaming through my blinds and someone knocking on my door. For a moment, I thought it might be David come to apologize, but when I opened the door, it was Mom, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "I'm so sorry about last night," she said, pulling me into a hug. David told me what happened. He was completely out of line. I let her in, grateful for her presence despite my confusion. She bustled around my kitchen, making coffee as if it were any normal morning. I watched her familiar movements, the way she always measured the coffee precisely, the way she warmed the mugs first with hot water. "David doesn't mean what he said," she told me, placing a steaming mug in front of me. "He's always been jealous of your relationship with your father." I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic. "He said Dad treated me better because I was adopted." Mom sat across from me, shaking her head. "That's ridiculous. If anything, your father was harder on you because he was so afraid of people thinking exactly that we favored you because you were adopted. He wanted everyone to know we saw you as absolutely our own." I stared into my coffee. "But I'm not, am I? Your own, I mean." Mom reached across the table and took my hand. "Sarah, the day we brought you home was the happiest day of my life. I had been carrying you in my heart for years before you were ever born." Her words triggered a memory. Me at 7 years old, asking Mom why she didn't have any pictures of herself pregnant with me, the way my friend Jessica's mom did. "Because I carried you in my heart, not my tummy," she had said, pulling me onto her lap. At the time, I thought it was just a sweet saying. Now I understood it had been the truth. "Tell me about the day you got me," I said softly. Mom's face softened with the memory. It was April 15th, a Tuesday. The cherry blossoms were blooming early that year. Helen had gone into labor the night before, and the pastor's wife called us around midnight. Your father and I barely slept. We kept checking the nursery, making sure everything was perfect. I could picture it, the yellow room that had been mine, with the hand-painted mural of woodland creatures that Dad had spent weeks creating. The call came at 7:42 in the morning. You were here, a healthy baby girl. We drove to the hospital with David in the back seat, confused about why we were in such a rush. He was only 5, too young to really understand what was happening. I smiled, imagining little David, always so serious even as a child. The hospital had a special room for adoptions, Mom continued. Helen was there, holding you. She looked so young, so tired, but she smiled when we walked in. I've been getting to know her a little, she told us. She's perfect. Mom's eyes filled with tears at the memory. And you were. 6 pounds, 4 ounces of absolute perfection. When the nurse placed you in my arms, it was like my heart finally found its missing piece. I swallowed hard. Did she say anything else to you? Mom nodded. She said she hoped you would forgive her someday, that she wasn't ready to be a mother, but she wanted you to have the best life possible. She asked if we would tell you about her when you were older, and you said yes, I whispered. We meant to, Mom said, her voice thick with regret. But as time passed, it got harder. You were so completely ours. We were afraid of confusing you, of making you feel different. And then one day, David asked if you were adopted. He had overheard us talking, and we panicked. We told him never to mention it to you, that we would tell you when the time was right. But the time was never right. I finished for her. No, she admitted. And that was our mistake. We should have told you the truth from the beginning. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of 32 years of secrets between us. What about my birth father? I asked finally. Did Helen ever say anything about him? Mom hesitated. Not much, just that he was a student at Tufts as well, that they had dated briefly. His name was Michael, but she didn't tell us his last name. She said he didn't know about the pregnancy. She never told him. Another piece of my identity, nameless and faceless. A man who might be walking around Boston right now, not knowing he had a daughter. We have pictures, Mom said suddenly, of the day we brought you home. Would you like to see them? I nodded, and she pulled a small envelope from her purse. The photographs were different from the ones in the family album. More candid, less posed. There was one of Dad holding me in the hospital hallway, his face a mixture of terror and elation. One of David peering into my car seat, his expression skeptical. And one of Mom sitting in a rocking chair in my nursery, tears streaming down her face as she held me against her chest. That was the first night, she said softly. You wouldn't stop crying. We tried everything. Feeding, changing, rocking. Nothing worked. I was convinced we were doing everything wrong, that you somehow knew we weren't your real parents. I looked at her face in the photograph, exhausted, worried, but radiating love. Finally, around 3 a.m., you fell asleep right here. She touched the spot just above her heart. Your father took this picture because he said he never wanted to forget the moment you decided to trust us. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Whatever doubts David had planted began to dissolve in the face of this undeniable evidence of love. I have something else for you, Mom said, reaching into her purse again. She pulled out a small worn teddy bear, no bigger than her palm. This was with you at the hospital. Helen wanted you to have it. It was the only thing from her that we kept. I took the tiny bear, running my finger over its matted fur. Had my birth mother held this same bear, wondering about the daughter she would never know? I've made so many mistakes, Mom said, wiping her eyes. But loving you was never one of them. You are my daughter, Sarah. Not by blood, but by choice. Every day for 32 years, I've chosen you, and I will keep choosing you for the rest of my life. I reached across the table and took her hand. This woman who had bandaged my knees, cheered at my graduations, held me through heartbreaks. Not my mother by birth, but my mother in every way that mattered. I choose you too, Mom. I whispered. The next few days passed in a blur of emotions. I took a week off from the hospital, claiming a family emergency, which wasn't far from the truth. Mom stayed with me for 2 nights, then reluctantly returned to her own house. David had gone back to New York without saying goodbye. I spent hours online, searching for information about Helen Graham from Springfield, Massachusetts. I found a few possibilities on social media, but none seemed right. They were too young or too old or had lived in Springfield for only a short time. I also looked into the legal aspects of my adoption. According to Massachusetts law, I had the right to request my original birth certificate, which might have more information about my biological parents. I filled out the forms and sent them in, knowing it could take weeks to get a response. 5 days after the revelation, I felt strong enough to return to work. The hospital had always been my sanctuary, a place where I knew exactly who I was and what I was meant to do. That morning, I put on my scrubs with a sense of relief. For 12 hours, I could focus on my patients instead of my fractured identity. I was checking on Emma, a 7-year-old recovering from appendicitis, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at Dad's lawyer's office at 2. David." My stomach dropped. I hadn't heard from my brother since that terrible night. What could he want at the lawyer's office? I remembered his threat about contesting Dad's will and felt sick. "Are you okay, Nurse Sarah?" Emma asked, her small face concerned. "You look sad." I forced a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just remembered something I need to do later." By the time my shift ended, my nerves were frayed. I changed out of my scrubs and drove to the law offices of Hartman and Associates in downtown Boston. The receptionist directed me to a conference room where David was already waiting, along with Mr. Hartman, Dad's longtime lawyer, and another man I didn't recognize. "Sarah, thank you for coming," Mr. Hartman said, rising to greet me. "I believe you know your brother, and this is Mr. Reynolds from the firm's estate division." I nodded stiffly, not looking at David. "What is this about?" Mr. Hartman gestured for me to sit. "As you know, we were scheduled to have the formal reading of your father's will next week. However, David has raised some concerns that he felt needed to be addressed immediately." I glanced at David, who was studying his folded hands on the table. "What concerns?" Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat. "Ms. Mitchell, your brother has informed us that you are not Thomas Mitchell's biological daughter. He suggests that this information may not have been known to Mr. Mitchell when he drafted his will, and therefore the terms may need to be reconsidered." The clinical way he stated it made my blood run cold. I was legally adopted by Thomas and Eleanor Mitchell as an infant. My father was fully aware of this fact when he made his will. "Be that as it may," Mr. Reynolds continued, "Mr. Mitchell's will specifically references his children, which, in legal terms, typically refers to biological offspring unless adoption is explicitly mentioned." "This is ridiculous," I said, my voice rising. "I am legally his daughter. My birth certificate lists Thomas Mitchell as my father." "An amended birth certificate," David finally spoke, still not meeting my eyes. "Not the original." I turned to Mr. Hartman, who had known our family for decades. "Did my father ever indicate to you that he intended to exclude me from his will because I was adopted?" The older lawyer looked uncomfortable. "No, he did not. In fact, that's not the point," David interrupted. "The point is, he might have distributed things differently if he'd been thinking clearly about who his real heirs were." "His real heirs?" I repeated, disbelief giving way to anger. "I sat by his hospital bed for 8 weeks. I was there when he took his last breath. Where were you, David? Making deals on Wall Street?" David's face reddened. "I provided for this family while you were playing nurse. Do you have any idea how much Dad's medical bills cost? Who do you think paid for the experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't cover?" "That's enough," Mr. Hartman said firmly. "This is precisely why Thomas wanted the two of you to handle his estate together. He anticipated that emotions would be running high after his passing." "Wait," I said, confused. "What do you mean, together?" Mr. Hartman sighed. "As I was trying to explain before we got sidetracked, Thomas named both of you as co-executors of his will. Not just Sarah, as you seem to believe, David." David looked genuinely surprised. "But you said—" "I said that Sarah was named in the will as an executor. I never said she was the only one." Mr. Hartman adjusted his glasses. "Thomas was very clear that he wanted his children, both of his children, to work together to settle his affairs." David fell silent, and I could see him processing this information, recalculating. "Now," Mr. Hartman continued. As for this question about Sarah's status as an heir, I can tell you unequivocally that Thomas understood exactly what he was doing when he drafted his will. He specifically instructed me to ensure that both of his children would be treated equally, regardless of biological connection. Mr. Reynolds looked embarrassed. I see. In that case, David cut in. We still need to consider Mom's wishes. Dad's estate passes to her first anyway. Actually, Mr. Hartman said, your father made some specific bequests that bypass your mother. The family home, for instance, he left to both of you jointly, with your mother retaining lifetime tenancy rights. I was stunned. Dad had left David and me the house, the beautiful Victorian in Cambridge that had been in the Mitchell family for generations. That's not possible, David said, his voice tight. That house has been in the Mitchell family for over 100 years. It should go to a Mitchell. The implication hung in the air. Not to me. Not to someone who didn't share the Mitchell blood. Mr. Hartman looked at David over the top of his glasses. Sarah is a Mitchell, legally, and, I would venture to say, in every way that mattered to your father. This is insane, David muttered. Dad would never have wanted the family home to go to what, David? I asked quietly. To his daughter? The one who took care of him when he was dying? The one who promised him she would look after Mom? David stood up abruptly, his chair scraping across the hardwood floor. I need to consult with my own lawyer about this. Mr. Reynolds looked alarmed. Mr. Mitchell, I should advise you that contesting the will would be a lengthy and costly process, with very little chance of success given the clarity of your father's intentions. We'll see about that, David snapped. He gathered his coat and briefcase. This meeting is over. As he stormed toward the door, I found my voice. David, wait. Can't we talk about this? This isn't what Dad would have wanted. He paused in the doorway, his back to me. You don't get to tell me what my father would have wanted, he said coldly. You're not even a real Mitchell. The words hit me like a physical blow. Mr. Hartman made a sound of protest, but David was already gone, the door slamming behind him. I sat there, humiliation burning through me. To be disowned so publicly, so coldly, by my own brother, it was unbearable. I'm very sorry about that, Sarah, Mr. Hartman said, his kind eyes filled with concern. Your father would be deeply disappointed in David's behavior. I nodded mechanically, too numb to speak. For what it's worth, the older lawyer continued, your father was immensely proud of you. During our last meeting, when he knew his time was growing short, he spent nearly an hour telling me about your work at the Children's Hospital, about the difference you were making in those kids' lives. A tear slipped down my cheek. He also told me about the day they brought you home, Mr. Hartman said softly. He said it was the day he truly understood what it meant to be a father, that it had nothing to do with biology and everything to do with love. I broke then, sobs tearing from my chest. All the confusion, the hurt, the betrayal of the past week came pouring out. Mr. Reynolds discreetly left the room, but Mr. Hartman stayed, passing me tissues and waiting patiently until my tears subsided. What do I do now? I asked finally, my voice hoarse. You grieve, he said simply. You grieve for your father, and for the relationship with your brother that has been damaged. And then you honor Thomas by being the person he raised you to be. I left the law office feeling hollowed out, scraped raw. As I walked to my car, my phone rang. It was Mom. David just called me, she said without preamble, her voice tight with anger. He told me what happened at the lawyer's office. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. It's okay, I said automatically, though nothing was okay. No, it's not, Mom said firmly. It's not okay at all. I've told David that, until he apologizes to you and accepts you as his sister, he is not welcome in my home, our home. Her fierceness took my breath away. In all my 32 years, I had never heard Mom take such a hard line with David, her firstborn, her golden boy. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do, she interrupted. I've made many mistakes, Sarah, but I will not make the mistake of letting anyone, even my own son, deny that you are my daughter. Thomas and I chose you. We wanted you. We loved you from the moment we knew you existed. That makes you ours, in every way that matters. As her words washed over me, something shifted inside me, a piece of my fractured identity settling back into place. I might not be a Mitchell by blood, but I was a Mitchell by choice, by love, by 32 years of shared history that no DNA test could erase. "I love you, Mom," I whispered. "I love you too, sweetheart," she said. "Now come home. We have a lot to talk about." Home. Despite everything, I still had a home. I didn't go straight to Mom's house. Instead, I found myself driving to Mount Auburn Cemetery, where Dad had been buried just 4 weeks earlier. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gravestones as I made my way to his plot, a simple granite marker with his name, dates, and the words, "Beloved husband and father." Father. Despite what David believed, despite the absence of shared DNA, Thomas Mitchell had been my father in every way that mattered. I sat on the cold ground beside his grave, tracing the engraved letters with my fingertips. "I wish you were here, Dad," I whispered. "I wish you could tell me what to do about David, about everything." The cemetery remained silent, but as I sat there, memories of Dad filled my mind. Not just the big moments like graduations or birthdays, but the small, everyday moments that defined our relationship. Him teaching me to change a tire in the driveway when I got my first car. The way he'd leave the sports section out for me, because he knew I liked to read the baseball scores. How he'd always saved the corner piece of birthday cake for me because he knew I loved the extra frosting. Those weren't the actions of a man who saw me as less than his true daughter. Those were the actions of a father who loved unconditionally. As the realization washed over me, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but alongside it grew a quiet certainty, a newfound strength. I was Sarah Mitchell. I had always been Sarah Mitchell. No revelation about my biological origins could change the person I had become, the values I held, the life I had built. I stood up, brushing leaves from my clothes, and made a silent promise to Dad's memory. I would not let David's anger destroy our family. I would fight for my place, not out of greed for any inheritance, but because it was where I belonged. By the time I arrived at Mom's house, our house, dusk was falling. The porch light was on, a warm beacon in the gathering darkness. Mom met me at the door with a tight hug. "I made your favorite," she said, leading me to the kitchen. Chicken pot pie. The familiar smell wrapped around me like a blanket. Mom had made chicken pot pie for every significant moment in my life. First days of school, college acceptance, job offers. It was her way of saying that no matter what changed, some things remained constant. Her love for me was one of those constants. As we ate, Mom filled me in on her conversation with David. "He's hurt and confused," she said, though her tone suggested limited patience for his behavior. "He feels like the family history he thought was his is somehow being taken from him." "I'm not taking anything from him," I protested. "I just want to be treated like his sister, like I always have been." Mom reached across the table and took my hand. "I know, sweetheart. But David has always defined himself by being a Mitchell, by having Mitchell blood, Mitchell traditions, Mitchell responsibilities. Finding out that you don't share that blood but are still entitled to the Mitchell name and inheritance, it's shaken him." I understood, in a way. David had always been so proud of the family heritage. The grandfather who had been a judge, the great-grandfather who had helped found one of Boston's oldest law firms. He'd followed in their footsteps, choosing a career in finance because it was what Mitchell men did. I had broken the mold, becoming a nurse instead of pursuing a more prestigious profession, something he had occasionally teased me about. "What do we do now?" I asked, pushing my half-eaten pie around the plate. Mom's expression turned resolute. "We stopped tiptoeing around the truth. I've spent 32 years afraid that knowing you were adopted would somehow make you feel less loved, less a part of this family. It's time I trusted in the strength of our bond." She stood up and went to the sideboard, returning with a thick leather-bound book I had never seen before. "This is for you," she said, placing it in front of me. I opened it carefully. Inside were documents, the original adoption papers, letters, photographs I had never seen. On the first page was a handwritten note in Dad's familiar script. "For Sarah, when the time is right. With all my love, Dad." He put this together during his last few months, Mom explained, her voice thick with emotion. "He knew he wouldn't be here when you finally learned the truth. This was his way of making sure you heard his side of the story." With trembling hands, I turned the pages. There were photos of Mom and Dad at the adoption agency, their faces young and full of hope. A copy of the home study they had undergone, describing them as exceptionally prepared for parenthood. A letter from the pastor who had connected them with Helen, praising them as the perfect family for the baby girl about to be born. And then, most surprisingly, letters from Helen herself. Several of them, dated over the years. The most recent was from just 5 years ago. "You've been in touch with her?" I asked, stunned. Mom nodded. "She writes every few years, just to check that you're okay. She never asked to meet you or disrupt your life. She just wanted to know that you were happy, healthy, loved." I scanned the letters quickly. In each one, Helen asked about my milestones, starting school, graduating high school, going to college. And in each one, she ended the same way. "Please tell her, when the time comes, that I have never regretted giving her to you, only that I couldn't be the mother she deserved." Tears blurred my vision. This woman, this stranger who had given birth to me, had thought of me all these years, had wondered about me, had, in her own way, loved me enough to let me go. "There's more," Mom said softly, pointing to the back of the book. I turned to the last section and gasped. There were photographs of a woman with dark hair and eyes exactly like mine. In one, she stood in front of a bookstore, smiling at the camera. In another, she was sitting on a park bench, reading. The most recent showed her with a man and 2 teenage children, a boy and a girl, in front of what appeared to be the Grand Canyon. "That's Helen," Mom confirmed, "and her family, her husband, Mark, and their children, Jason and Rebecca." I stared at the faces that looked so much like my own. These people who shared my blood, but were complete strangers to me. "How did you get these?" "She sent them," Mom said. "Every few years, along with her letters. She wanted you to have them, if you ever wanted to know her." The generosity of this, both from Helen and from my parents, was overwhelming. While I had lived in ignorance, they had been protecting me, preparing for the day when the truth would come out. "Why now?" I asked. "Why didn't you give me this after Dad died?" Mom's face crumpled. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that once you knew you had another family out there, you might not need me anymore. It was selfish, and I'm so sorry." "Oh, Mom." I moved to her side of the table and wrapped my arms around her. "You're my mother. Nothing could ever change that." She held me tight. This woman who had not carried me in her body, but had carried me in her heart for more than 3 decades. "David will come around," she whispered against my hair. "He just needs time." But as I held her, I wasn't sure I believed that. The look in David's eyes at the lawyer's office had been more than shock or confusion. It had been rejection, complete and absolute rejection of me as his sister. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider that the relationship might be irreparable, that the brother who had taught me to ride a bike, who had threatened to beat up my high school boyfriend when he made me cry, who had stood beside me at Dad's funeral, that brother might be gone forever. The thought brought fresh pain, but along with it came a strange sense of clarity. If David couldn't accept me as his sister, that was his loss, not mine. I knew who I was now. Sarah Mitchell, daughter of Thomas and Eleanor, nurse, fighter, survivor. I had earned my place in this family through 32 years of love and shared history, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even David, take that away from me. "I need to talk to him," I said, straightening up. Not to beg or apologize, but to make him understand that I'm not going anywhere. This is my family too, and I'm going to fight for it. Mom looked at me with pride. "Your father would be so proud of you right now." And for the first time since learning the truth about my adoption, I fully believed her. Thomas Mitchell had been my father, in every way that mattered. And I was going to make sure his last wish, for his children to work together, to remain a family, was honored. I was done being the victim in this story. It was time to take control. The next morning, I woke with a newfound determination. After breakfast with Mom, I went to the attic to look through Dad's old files. If I was going to face David as an equal, I needed to fully understand what was at stake. The details of Dad's will, the extent of the family assets, the legal standing of my adoption. The attic was dusty and warm, filled with generations of Mitchell family history. I found Dad's filing cabinets tucked under the eaves, meticulously organized as everything in his life had been. I started with the drawer labeled Family Documents, pulling out folders of birth certificates, marriage licenses, and property deeds. In the back of the drawer, I found a thick manila envelope marked simply Sarah. Inside were documents I'd never seen before, detailed records of my adoption, correspondence with the lawyer who had handled it, and medical records from my birth. But underneath those papers was something unexpected, A sealed envelope with "To be opened only by Sarah Mitchell upon my death," written in Dad's handwriting. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter, dated just 3 weeks before Dad died. "My dearest Sarah," it began. "If you're reading this, 2 things have happened. I am gone, and you have finally learned the truth about your adoption. I hope you can forgive us for not telling you sooner. It was the greatest mistake of my life. Born not out of shame, but out of love so fierce I couldn't bear the thought of you feeling even for a moment that you were anything less than our daughter, our miracle, our greatest joy. There are things you need to know now, practical things that may become important in the days ahead. First, your adoption was conducted with full legal standing. Judge William Harrington, my dear friend, ensured that every document was properly filed and that your status as our legal daughter is incontestable. Should anyone, even David, attempt to challenge your rightful place in our family, the documents in this envelope will put the matter to rest. Second, when I drafted my will, I did so with complete knowledge of your adoption and with the explicit intention that you and David would share equally in whatever I have to leave behind. This was not charity or obligation, Sarah. It was the natural expression of a father's love for both his children. Third, and perhaps most importantly, within the family trust is a provision that has existed since my grandfather's time. It stipulates that the Cambridge house must always pass to a Mitchell who works in service to others, as doctors, teachers, public servants. For 3 generations, there has always been at least one such Mitchell. In our generation, it was me, as a professor. In yours, it is you, as a nurse. David chose a different path, one I respect, but one that does not fulfill this condition. This is not widely known within the family. I never told David because I didn't want him to feel pressured to choose a career based on an old man's wishes. But the fact remains, even if you were not my legal daughter, which you absolutely are, the house would still be rightfully yours based on this provision alone. I know my son. I know that grief can make him stubborn, can amplify his worst tendencies toward pride and inflexibility. If he is challenging your place in the family, know that it comes from pain, not true rejection. Stand firm, Sarah. You are every bit a Mitchell, not because of papers or legalities, but because you embody the best qualities our family has always aspired to: compassion, integrity, and quiet strength. I love you, my daughter. I have loved you from the moment I first held you, and even now, from wherever I am, I love you still. Dad. Tears streamed down my face as I read his words. This final gift, this armor he had crafted for me, knowing I might need it after he was gone. Dad had always been 5 steps ahead, always planning, always protecting. Even in death, he was still taking care of me. I gathered the documents and went downstairs to find Mom. She was in the garden, pruning the rose bushes Dad had tended so carefully. "I found Dad's letter," I said, holding up the envelope. "Did you know about this?" She straightened, pushing a strand of gray hair from her face. "I knew he left something for you. I didn't know what it contained." I handed her the letter, watching as she read it, her eyes filling with tears. "Oh, Thomas," she whispered. "Always the strategist. Did you know about the trust provision? About the house?" She nodded slowly. "It was one of the reasons we were so proud when you decided to become a nurse. Not just because it's noble work, but because we knew it meant you were truly a Mitchell in spirit as well as in name. And David never knew. Your father didn't want him to feel obligated to follow a particular path. He wanted David to find his own way." She sighed. "I wonder if that was another mistake. If David had known, he might have made different choices," I finished for her. "Or he might have resented the constraint even more." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of family history heavy between us. "I need to take these to Mr. Hartman," I said finally, gathering the documents. "And then I need to talk to David." Mom squeezed my hand. "Be gentle with him if you can, but be strong for yourself." I drove to Mr. Hartman's office, the envelope secure on the seat beside me. The receptionist showed me in immediately. Perhaps word of the previous day's drama had spread. "Sarah," the lawyer greeted me warmly. "What can I do for you today?" I placed Dad's letter and the supporting documents on his desk. "I need to know if these change anything about the situation with David." He read through the materials carefully, his bushy eyebrows rising higher with each page. "Well," he said finally, "your father certainly covered all the bases. This trust provision alone would make any challenge to your inheritance of the house futile." So legally, I'm on solid ground? Absolutely ironclad, he confirmed. Though I must say, this puts me in an awkward position as the family lawyer. I have obligations to both you and David as co-executors. I understand, I said. I'm not asking you to take sides. I just needed to know where things stand legally before I talk to him. Mr. Hartman leaned back in his chair. If I may offer some personal advice? At my nod, he continued. Families are more important than houses or money. Whatever legal advantage you may have, consider whether winning the battle might cost you the war. His words stayed with me as I drove to my apartment, where I planned to call David. But as I pulled into my parking space, I was surprised to see a familiar figure sitting on the steps of my building. David. He stood as I approached, his face unreadable. We need to talk, he said simply. I nodded, unlocking the door and leading him inside. We sat across from each other at my small kitchen table, the silence stretching between us. Mom called me, he said finally. She told me about the letters from Helen, about the photographs. I waited, not sure where this was going. She also told me you went to the attic this morning. He sighed heavily. Found anything interesting? So that was it. He was worried about what I might have discovered. I found Dad's letter to me, I admitted, about the trust provision for the house. David's face tightened. Of course you did. Did you know about it? Not until this morning, he said bitterly. Mom told me after you left. Apparently the house was never going to be mine anyway. Adoption or no adoption. I studied my brother's face. The familiar angles so like Dad's. The stubborn set of his jaw. It doesn't have to be this way, David. We don't have to be enemies. Don't we? He asked, his voice sharp. You've taken everything. Dad's attention when we were kids, his pride in your noble career choice, and now his house. What's left for me? The unfairness of his accusation stung, but I recognized the pain behind it. Dad loved you, David. He was so proud of you. Not enough to tell me the truth, he shot back. Not enough to warn me that my career choice meant losing the family home. He didn't want you to feel forced into a path you didn't choose, I said, echoing Mom's words. He wanted you to be happy. David laughed humorlessly. And now his perfect adopted daughter gets everything, while his actual son gets to watch from the sidelines. How convenient. I took a deep breath, tamping down my anger. This wasn't about the house or the will. This was about a little boy who had suddenly had to share his parents' love with a new baby, who had grown into a man still fighting for his place. I have something to show you, I said, pulling out the photo album Mom had given me the night before. I opened it to a picture of David holding me as a baby, his face solemn with responsibility. Do you remember this? He glanced at it, then looked away, vaguely. Mom says you insisted on being the first one to hold me after they brought me home from the hospital. You told them you needed to inspect me to make sure I was good enough to be a Mitchell. A flash of recognition crossed his face. I was 5, he muttered. And this one, I turned to another photo, this one showing David and me at the beach. Maybe a year later, I was toddling after him, arms outstretched, while he looked back at me with undisguised affection. Mom says you wouldn't let anyone else help me build sandcastles. You said I was your sister, and you would teach me. David's expression softened slightly. I remember that vacation. You ate sand when I wasn't looking. I smiled. And you told Mom and Dad it was your fault for not watching me closely enough. He was quiet for a long moment, looking at the photos, at the evidence of a bond that had formed long before either of us understood the complexities of family and inheritance. I was jealous of you, he admitted finally. From the day they brought you home. You were so tiny, so perfect. Mom and Dad looked at you like you were a miracle. I was, I said softly. That's how adoption works. They'd waited so long for me, gone through so much. But David, they never loved you any less because of me. There wasn't a limited supply of love in our family. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like Dad's that it made my heart ache. When I found those papers, it was like everything suddenly made sense. Why they were always so protective of you. Why Dad was always a little harder on me. I was the real Mitchell, so I had to uphold the family name. You were the chosen one, the special one. That's not true, I said firmly. If anything, I was always trying to live up to you. Brilliant, successful David who could do no wrong. Do you have any idea how intimidating it was to be your little sister? To know I could never be as smart, as confident, as perfectly Mitchell as you were? He looked genuinely surprised. You were intimidated by me? Of course I was. You graduated valedictorian, got into Harvard, became this hotshot investment banker. Meanwhile, I was just Sarah, the girl who was good with people but average at everything else. Dad was incredibly proud of you, David said quietly. Those last few months, when I would call, all he wanted to talk about was how amazing you were with the patients at the hospital, how you'd sat with him during chemo appointments and made him laugh. There was no bitterness in his voice now, just a sad recognition. I couldn't be there the way you were, he continued. My job, my family in New York, those felt like legitimate reasons at the time. Now I'm not so sure. You did what you could, I said. We all did. David looked down at the photo album again, at the evidence of our shared childhood, our shared love for the same parents. I said terrible things to you, things I didn't really mean. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was a start. Yes, you did. I was hurt, confused, angry at Dad for dying, at Mom for keeping secrets, at you for always being the one who did everything right. I almost laughed at the irony of it, each of us thinking the other was the favored child. The thing is, David said slowly, I'm still not sure how to feel about all this. About you being adopted, about the house, about Dad's will. I need time to process it. I nodded. I can give you time, but I need to know that when you're ready, you'll see me as your sister again. Your whole sister, not your half-sister, or your adopted sister, or whatever category you're putting me in right now. David was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and took my hand. The first physical contact between us since before the revelation. You're a Mitchell, he said simply. You always have been. It wasn't everything, but it was enough for now. Enough to begin rebuilding what had been broken. Over the next few days, a fragile peace settled between David and me. He returned to New York but called every evening, our conversations cautious but civil. We began the process of working together as co-executors of Dad's estate, with Mr. Hartman mediating our discussions. I could tell David was still struggling with the revelations about my adoption and the house, but he was making an effort to move forward. Meanwhile, I received notice that my request for my original birth certificate had been processed. It would be available for pickup at the Department of Vital Records the following week. A new nervousness took hold of me. Soon I would have concrete information about my birth mother, possibly even my birth father. Names, dates, details that would fill in the blank spaces of my origin story. I threw myself into work at the hospital, grateful for the distraction. It was during a night shift, as I sat with 8-year-old Lily through a particularly rough round of chemo, that I found myself thinking about Helen in a new way. What courage it must have taken for a 19-year-old girl to carry a baby to term, knowing she would give that baby away. What love it must have required to place her child's needs above her own desire to be a mother. Nurse Sarah, Lily whispered, her small face pale against the hospital pillow. Will you tell me a story? I smiled and stroked her hairless head. What kind of story would you like? A true one, she said. About when you were little. So I told her about learning to ride a bike, about Dad running alongside me holding the seat, about the moment he let go and I realized I was riding on my own. It was only as I was telling it that I realized the metaphor in the memory. Dad preparing me to continue without him, knowing I was stronger than I believed. When my shift ended, I drove to Mom's house. She was in the kitchen, baking cookies, her therapy since Dad's death. I've been thinking, I said, accepting a warm chocolate chip cookie. About Helen. Mom paused in her mixing. What about her? The letters? The photos? She obviously still thinks about me. Still cares what happens to me. I took a deep breath. I think I want to meet her. Mom was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I wondered if you might. I have her current address and phone number, if you're sure. You do? I was surprised, though I shouldn't have been. Mom had always been meticulous about keeping track of important information. We exchanged Christmas cards, she admitted. Just brief notes, updates about you, nothing too personal, but enough to stay in touch. The idea that these two women, both in some sense my mothers, had maintained this connection for decades, without my knowledge, was both touching and slightly unsettling. She lives in New Hampshire now, Mom continued. About 2 hours from here. Exeter. Does she know about Dad? I asked suddenly. About his death? Mom nodded. I sent her a note after the funeral. She sent flowers, anonymously of course. The card just said, "With deepest sympathies for your loss, H." I remembered the beautiful arrangement of white lilies that had arrived without a personal note. At the time, I'd assumed they were from one of Dad's colleagues. What about her husband? Her other children? Do they know about me? Mom hesitated. I think her husband knows. I'm not sure about the children. That's something you'd have to ask her. The thought was overwhelming. Not just meeting Helen, but potentially meeting half-siblings I never knew I had. Would they welcome me or see me as an intrusion? I need to think about this more, I said finally. It's a big step. Mom squeezed my hand. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Just remember that Helen gave you up because she wanted you to have the family you deserved, the family we could give you. Meeting her now doesn't change who you are or who raised you. The next morning, I received a call from Mr. Hartman. Sarah, he said without preamble, I've just had a rather concerning conversation with David's lawyer. I think you should come to my office. An hour later, I sat across from the family lawyer, trying to process what he'd just told me. So despite everything, the trust provision, Dad's letter, the legal adoption, David is still challenging the will? Mr. Hartman looked troubled. Not exactly challenging the will itself. He's questioning the validity of your adoption. The validity? I repeated. What does that even mean? It was a legal adoption. David's lawyer is suggesting there may have been procedural issues. Apparently, he's obtained records indicating that the home study process was expedited, which was unusual for the time. I thought back to what Dad's letter had said about his friend, Judge Harrington, ensuring everything was properly filed. So what if it was expedited? That doesn't make it invalid. No, it doesn't, Mr. Hartman agreed, but it gives them a foothold to request further investigation. If they can create enough doubt, they could potentially delay the probate process for months, even years. Why would David do this? I asked, hurt giving way to anger. He said he was accepting things. We've been talking every day, working together on Dad's affairs. Mr. Hartman removed his glasses, polishing them thoughtfully. I've known your brother since he was a boy, Sarah. David has always been driven by a need to prove himself, to live up to the Mitchell name. This isn't really about the house or the money. It's about his identity, his place in the family. So what do? I demanded. Just give up? Let him bully me out of my inheritance to soothe his ego? Of course not, the lawyer said calmly. But I want you to consider your options carefully. This could get ugly and very public. Family secrets have a way of causing collateral damage when they're dragged into the light. I thought of Mom, already fragile from Dad's death, having to endure the stress of a legal battle between her children. I thought of my patients at the hospital, of the possibility of my private life becoming gossip fodder. There must be another way, I said finally. Mr. Hartman nodded. I think there is. But it will require you to be the bigger person, to offer David something he needs more than the house itself, which is what? Recognition, validation, a place in the Mitchell legacy that's uniquely his. The older lawyer leaned forward. The house means something to David beyond its monetary value. It represents the Mitchell family history, a history he feels is his birthright, in a way it isn't yours, fair or not. I bristled at this, but Mr. Hartman held up a placating hand. I'm not saying that's right or fair. I'm saying that's how he feels. If you acknowledge that feeling, if you find a way to honor his connection to the Mitchell heritage while maintaining your legal rights, you might find a solution that preserves both the property and your relationship with your brother. As I drove home from the lawyer's office, I turned his words over in my mind. What did David need that I could give him? What would honor his connection to the Mitchell name without requiring me to surrender my own place in the family? The answer came to me as I passed the Cambridge Public Library, where Dad had taken us both for story hour when we were small. The Mitchell family papers, generations of letters, photographs, and documents that chronicled our family's history in New England. Dad had always intended to donate them to the Historical Society eventually, but they remained in boxes in the attic, waiting for someone to properly archive them. It was a perfect project for David, with his reverence for Mitchell history, a way for him to be the keeper of the family legacy, to ensure that the Mitchell name lived on in Cambridge long after the house eventually passed out of family hands. I pulled over and called him immediately. David, I said when he answered, we need to talk about the Mitchell family papers. What about them? He asked warily. I have a proposal for you, one that I think would honor Dad's wishes for both of us. He was silent for a moment. I'm listening. By the time I finished outlining my idea, The tension in his voice had eased slightly. "That actually makes sense," he admitted. "The papers should go to someone who cares about the family history. And that's you," I said simply. "It always has been. Remember how you used to memorize all the dates of when our ancestors came to Massachusetts? How you knew which great-great-uncle fought in which war?" He gave a reluctant laugh. "I was a weird kid." "You were a Mitchell," I corrected him. "Proud of your heritage, protective of your family's place in history. That hasn't changed." "And the house?" he asked, the wariness returning to his voice. "The house stays with me as the trust stipulates," I said firmly, "but with conditions. First, Mom has lifetime tenancy rights, as Dad wanted. Second, you and your family always have a place there. Holidays, summers, whenever you want to visit. It remains the Mitchell family home in function, if not in legal ownership." "And third?" he asked, sensing there was more. "Third, when I eventually sell it or leave it to someone in my will, a portion of its value goes to establish a Mitchell family scholarship for students pursuing careers in public service. So the Mitchell legacy continues even when the house passes out of our hands." There was a long silence. Then David said, "I need to think about this." "Take your time," I said. "But David, call off your lawyer. No more challenges to the adoption. That's non-negotiable." Another pause. "I'll call him today." It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a step in the right direction. I had offered David a role that honored his place in the family without diminishing my own. Now it was up to him to decide if his need for validation was stronger than his desire for revenge. As I drove home, I realized that this approach, finding a third path when two sides seemed irreconcilable, was something Dad had excelled at. He had been a negotiator, a peacemaker, a finder of creative solutions. Perhaps I was more of a Mitchell than even I had realized. The thought made me smile as I pulled into my driveway. Tomorrow, I would go to the Department of Vital Records and pick up my original birth certificate. I would look at the names of the people who had brought me into this world, the people whose genetic material I carried. But I knew now that those names, important as they might be, were just the beginning of my story. The rest had been written by Thomas and Eleanor Mitchell, by growing up in that Victorian house in Cambridge, by being sister to David. I was Sarah Mitchell, and no one, not even David in his anger, not even Helen with her biological claim, could take that away from me. The Department of Vital Records was housed in a drab government building in downtown Boston. I sat in my car for several minutes, gathering my courage before going inside. This piece of paper I was about to receive would answer questions I'd had for only a week, but that had somehow become urgent, essential to my understanding of myself. The process was surprisingly mundane. Show ID, sign a form, pay a fee. The clerk disappeared into a back room and returned with a sealed envelope. "Congratulations," she said with practiced cheerfulness. "You've just met the bureaucratic requirements for accessing your own birth information." I thanked her and found a quiet corner of the building's lobby to open the envelope. With trembling fingers, I unfolded the certificate, a document that had existed for 32 years without my knowledge. Name, Baby Girl Graham. Date of birth, April 15th, 1993. Place of birth, Massachusetts General Hospital. Boston mother, Helen Marie Graham, age 19. Father, Michael James Whitley, age 20. I stared at the name, Michael James Whitley. My birth father had a name. He had been 20 years old when I was born, just a year older than Helen. I wondered if he had ever known about me, if Helen had kept her pregnancy a secret from him as she'd told my parents. I had so many questions, but at least now I had a starting point. As I drove home, my phone rang. It was David. "I've been thinking about your proposal," he said, without preamble. "About the family papers and the house. And?" I held my breath. "I think it's a good compromise," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "I've called off my lawyer." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you, David. That means a lot." "Don't thank me yet," he cautioned. "There's something else we need to discuss. Something I found in Dad's papers that you should know about." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "Not over the phone. I'm flying up from New York tonight. Can you meet me at Mom's house tomorrow morning?" "Of course," I said, concern replacing my relief. "Is it bad?" "It's complicated," David said. "Just be there, okay? 10 o'clock. I spent a restless night, my mind cycling through possibilities of what David might have found. More secrets about my adoption, something about Helen or my newly named birth father, Michael Whitley. By morning, I was exhausted, but determined to face whatever new revelation awaited me. Mom was making breakfast when I arrived, the scent of coffee and bacon filling the kitchen. "David called me," she said, hugging me. "He told me about your compromise. I'm so proud of you both for working this out." "Did he tell you what else he found?" I asked. "In Dad's papers?" A shadow crossed her face. "No, just that he needed to talk to us both." David arrived precisely at 10, looking tired but resolved. After perfunctory greetings, we gathered in Dad's study, the room where this had all begun with David's discovery of my adoption papers. "I've been going through Dad's filing cabinets," David began, placing a folder on the desk, "organizing things for the estate inventory. I found these in a hidden compartment in the bottom drawer." He opened the folder to reveal several yellowed newspaper clippings and what appeared to be court documents. "What are they?" Mom asked, peering at the papers. "They're about Helen's parents," David said, his eyes on me. "Your biological grandparents." I picked up the topmost clipping. It was from the Springfield Republican, dated 1992, the year before I was born. The headline read, "Local pastor and wife charged with abuse." My blood ran cold as I scanned the article. It detailed allegations that Reverend Thomas Graham and his wife Martha had physically and emotionally abused teenagers in their church's youth program. Further clippings showed that they had eventually pleaded guilty to lesser charges and received suspended sentences. "Helen's parents were abusive," I whispered, looking up at David. "The pastor and his wife that Mom mentioned, the ones who gave her the ultimatum when she got pregnant." David nodded grimly. "It gets worse. Look at this one." He handed me another clipping, this one from early 1993, just months before my birth. "Pastor's daughter alleges abuse. Parents deny claims." The article described how Helen Graham, then 19 and pregnant, had come forward with allegations that her parents had abused her throughout her childhood. The Grahams had denied everything, claiming their daughter was making false accusations because they had disapproved of her pregnancy outside of marriage. "There's a reason Helen gave you up," David said quietly. "And it wasn't just because she was young or because her parents disapproved. She was trying to protect you from them." I felt Mom's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. "Did your father know about this?" she asked David, her voice strained. "I think so," David replied. There's a note in his handwriting with these clippings. It says, "Protect Sarah from this history at all costs." The room spun around me. All these years, I'd imagined my birth mother as a scared teenager making a difficult but voluntary choice. Now I saw her as something more complex, a young woman escaping a legacy of abuse, making the ultimate sacrifice to keep her child safe. "But Mom said she stayed with the pastor's family until I was born," I said, confused. "If they were abusive." "Not her parents," Mom clarified, her face pale. "Another pastor's family from our church in Cambridge, friends of your father's who agreed to help her. We didn't know about the abuse allegations then. Helen never told us. But Dad found out later," David said. "These clippings are from after your adoption was finalized. He must have been researching Helen's family and discovered this." I sank into Dad's leather chair, overwhelmed. "So, he kept it secret, all these years." "To protect you," David said, his voice gentler than I'd heard it in weeks. "And maybe to protect himself and Mom too. If they had known about the abuse before the adoption, they might have been obligated to report it, which could have complicated things legally." Mom looked stricken. "We would never have kept you from knowing if we'd understood. We thought we were respecting Helen's privacy, her choice." "There's something else," David said, hesitating. "Something about your birth father." My head snapped up. "Michael Whitley? His name was on my birth certificate. I just got it yesterday." David's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You didn't tell me you'd requested that." "It's been a busy week," I said dryly. "What about him?" David handed me another document, a police report. Dad was thorough in his research. After he found out about Helen's parents, he apparently decided to investigate Michael Whitley too. I scanned the report, my heart sinking. It detailed an arrest for domestic violence in 1994, just a year after my birth. Michael Whitley had assaulted his girlfriend, causing injuries serious enough to require hospitalization. "He was violent," I whispered. "The man whose DNA I carry hurt women." "He was charged but never convicted," David pointed out. "The girlfriend refused to testify. But yes, it seems he had violent tendencies." I felt sick. I had spent a week wondering about my biological origins, imagining all kinds of scenarios. Never had I considered that I might come from a lineage of abusers on both sides. "This doesn't change who you are, Sarah," Mom said firmly, seeing my expression. "You are not defined by their actions or their genes." "Isn't that exactly what I am, though?" I asked bitterly. "A collection of their genes? What if I have their tendencies, their flaws?" "That's not how it works," David said, surprising me with his vehemence. "You're 32 years old, Sarah. If you had violent tendencies, we'd know by now. You're a pediatric nurse, for God's sake. You've devoted your life to helping children." His defense of me, coming after a week of rejection, broke something loose inside me. Tears spilled down my cheeks. "Why are you showing me this now? Why did you dig all this up?" David sat across from me, his expression solemn. "Because you deserve the truth. All of it. Not just the parts that are easy to hear. And," I prompted, sensing there was more, "and because I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I've been so caught up in my own sense of betrayal, my own hurt about being kept in the dark, that I never stopped to consider what this revelation meant for you, how much more destabilizing it must have been." Mom slipped quietly out of the room, giving us privacy for this moment of reconciliation. "When I found these articles," David continued, "I realized something. Dad kept these secrets not because he loved you more or trusted me less, but because he was trying to protect our whole family. You from a painful history, me from a burden of knowledge, himself and Mom from having to explain choices they'd made when they were young and desperate for a child." I wiped my eyes, trying to process everything. The abuse in Helen's family, the violence in Michael Whitley's past, and now this unexpected olive branch from my brother. "So where does this leave us?" I asked. "With the house? With Dad's will? With everything?" David reached across the desk and took my hand. "It leaves us as family," he said simply. "Complicated, imperfect, sometimes secretive, but family nonetheless. I was wrong to suggest you weren't a real Mitchell. If anything, discovering all this has made me realize how much Dad and Mom must have wanted you, to go through so much to make you their daughter." I squeezed his hand, grateful for this shift, this return to the brother I had known before. "What about Helen?" I asked. "Do you think I should still try to meet her knowing all this?" David considered this. "I think that's entirely up to you, but if you do, I'd like to go with you." I looked at him in surprise. "You would? She's part of your story," he said, "which makes her part of our family story too. And after seeing what she went through, what she was trying to escape by giving you up, I think I understand her choice better." I nodded, touched by his offer. "Thank you, David." He stood up, gathering the clippings and reports. "I'm going to put these somewhere safe, not hidden away like Dad did, but preserved as part of our family history. The real history, not just the sanitized version we tell at Christmas dinners." As he headed for the door, I called after him. "David, what made you change your mind? About me? About the will? About all of it?" He paused in the doorway. I realized that Dad made the choices he did out of love, for all of us. The least I could do was try to follow his example. After he left, I sat in Dad's study, surrounded by the books he had loved, the desk where he had worked, the chair where he had held me on his lap as a child. I thought about the secrets he had kept, not out of shame or deception, but out of a fierce desire to protect his family from pain. I thought about Helen, whose brutal childhood had led her to make the ultimate sacrifice for her baby. And I thought about myself, a Mitchell by choice and by love, if not by blood. Tomorrow, I would call the number Mom had for Helen. I would take the first steps toward meeting the woman who had given me life. But today, I would honor the people who had given me so much more. A home, a family, an identity built on love rather than genetics. I ran my fingers over Dad's desk, the wood smooth from decades of use. "Thank you," I whispered to his memory, "for choosing me, for protecting me, for making me a Mitchell." In the distance, I heard Mom and David in the kitchen, the familiar sounds of family, the clink of dishes, soft laughter, the comfortable rhythm of people who belong together despite their differences, their misunderstandings, their separate paths. I rose and went to join them, ready to begin the next chapter of our shared story. A month has passed since that day in Dad's study, when David and I finally found our way back to being siblings again. A month of healing, of reconstructing our relationship brick by brick. of learning to talk about the past with honesty rather than evasion. Today, I am driving to Exeter, New Hampshire. Beside me in the passenger seat is Mom, and in the back is David, who flew up from New York specifically for this meeting. It took 3 weeks of phone calls and cautious emails before Helen and I agreed to meet. She was surprised that I had finally discovered the truth, but seemed ready, eager, even, to reconnect after all these years. "Are you nervous?" Mom asks, noticing my white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel. "Terrified," I admit. "What do you say to the woman who gave birth to you, then gave you away?" "Thank you," David suggests from the back seat. That seems like a good place to start. We arrive at a small cafe on Water Street, its blue awning flapping gently in the autumn breeze. Helen had suggested meeting here rather than at her home, a neutral space for this monumental reunion. As we find parking, my heart races so fast I fear it might burst from my chest. "We'll be right here," Mom assures me as we enter the cafe. "But take whatever time you need with her. This is your moment, Sarah." I spot her immediately, sitting by the window. A woman with my eyes, my chin, my way of tucking hair behind one ear. She's in her early 50s now, with smile lines around her eyes and a stylish gray streak in her dark hair. She stands when she sees me, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. "Sarah," she says, my name sounding different in her voice. Not wrong, just new. "Helen," I reply, the name still strange on my tongue. Mother feels too intimate, too claimed. Mrs. Graham too formal for the woman whose blood runs in my veins. We stand awkwardly for a moment, neither sure of the protocol for this unprecedented meeting. Then, surprising us both, I step forward and hug her. She stiffens momentarily before her arms come around me, holding me with a gentle reverence. "I never thought I'd get to do that," she whispers, her voice thick with emotion. We sit across from each other, two women connected by biology and separated by choice, studying the familiar yet strange features we share. "Your mother and brother came with you?" she asks, glancing toward where Mom and David hover near the entrance. "Yes. Is that okay? I know we said just us at first, but they wanted to be here, for support." Helen smiles, and I see myself in the curve of her lips. "Of course it's okay. They're your family. I'd like to thank them, actually, for giving you the life I couldn't." I signal to Mom and David, who join us cautiously. More introductions, more awkward smiles. David pulls out chairs for everyone before sitting down himself, ever the gentleman. "Eleanor," Helen says, reaching for Mom's hand. "Thank you for the Christmas cards all these years, for keeping me connected to Sarah's life, even from a distance." Mom squeezes her hand. "Thank you for giving us the greatest gift of our lives. I've never seen my mother and my birth mother together before. These two women who have shaped my existence in such different ways. There's no jealousy between them, no competition for my affection, just a shared understanding of what it means to love someone enough to put their needs above your own. I have so many questions," I admit to Helen once we've ordered coffee. "About you, about your life, about why you gave me up." Helen takes a deep breath. "I imagine you do, and I'm ready to answer them, if you're ready to hear the answers. Some of them won't be easy. I know about your parents," I say quietly. "About the abuse allegations. David found the newspaper articles in my dad's things." Helen's face tightens, old pain resurfacing. "Then you know part of why I couldn't keep you. My parents were not good people, despite their standing in the community. I couldn't risk them having any influence over you." "And Michael Whitley?" I ask. "My birth father?" She looks surprised. "You know his name?" "It was on my original birth certificate," I explain. "We also found a police report about him. A domestic violence charge." Helen nods slowly. "That doesn't surprise me. Michael had a temper, though I didn't see the worst of it during our brief relationship. He was charming at first, then controlling. By the time I realized I was pregnant, I already knew I didn't want him in my life, or in my child's life." "Did he ever know about me?" I ask. "No," she says firmly. "I made sure of that. It wasn't just about his temper. He was immature, reckless. He wouldn't have been a good father, and I couldn't bear the thought of shared custody, of sending my baby to stay with him every other weekend. Not after what I'd experienced in my own childhood." I nod, understanding her choice in a new light. She hadn't just given me up because she was young or unprepared. She had actively chosen to place me with a stable, loving family as an act of protection. "Your parents, Thomas and Eleanor, they were everything I wanted for you," Helen continues, glancing at Mom. educated, kind, financially secure. Most importantly, they desperately wanted a child. I knew they would love you in the way every child deserves to be loved. They did, I assure her. They do. And you? Helen asks hesitantly. What has your life been like? I know bits and pieces from Eleanor's letters, but I'd like to hear it from you. So I tell her about growing up in Cambridge, about my work as a pediatric nurse, about losing Dad to cancer. I tell her about the past month's turmoil following the discovery of my adoption, David's initial rejection, our eventual reconciliation, the secrets uncovered and wounds healed. You've become exactly who I hoped you would be, Helen says when I finish. Strong, compassionate, resilient. What about your other children? I ask. Do they know about me? Helen nods. Jason and Rebecca. Yes. They know they have an older half-sister who was placed for adoption before I met their father. They've known for years. They'd like to meet you someday, if you're open to that. The idea of half-siblings, people who share my blood but not my history, is still strange to me, but I find I'm curious about them, about these genetic connections I never knew existed. I'd like that, I say. Not right away, but someday. David, who has been mostly silent, speaks up. Helen, may I ask you something? She turns to him, surprised. Of course. Have you ever regretted it? Giving Sarah up? It's a blunt question, but Helen doesn't seem offended. I've mourned the loss every day, she says honestly. I've wondered who she was becoming, if she was happy, if she ever thought about me, but regretted the decision? No. Seeing the woman she's become, knowing she had the childhood I couldn't have given her, how could I regret that? David nods, satisfied. I realize he needed to hear this, needed confirmation that the sister he grew up with had been placed with our family out of love, not abandonment. I have something for you, Helen says, reaching into her purse. She pulls out a small photo album, pictures of me when I was younger, of my parents, your biological grandparents, and some of Jason and Rebecca growing up. I thought you might want to see some of your genetic history, even the complicated parts. I take the album, touched by this gift. Thank you. I have something for you too. I reach into my bag and pull out a framed photograph, one of me in my nursing scrubs, taken on the day I received my pediatric certification. Mom thought you might like to have this. Helen takes the photo, her fingers tracing my face behind the glass. Look at you, she whispers. So beautiful, so accomplished. Because of you, Mom says unexpectedly, because you made the most selfless choice a mother can make. The four of us sit in the cafe for hours, sharing stories, filling in gaps, building bridges between separate lives that have always been invisibly connected. It's not a perfect reunion. There are awkward moments, painful revelations, tears shed for time lost. But there is also laughter, recognition, the strange joy of finding missing pieces of yourself in a stranger's face. When we finally say goodbye, Helen hugs me again, longer this time. I'm so proud of who you've become, she whispers, so grateful to have this chance to know you. We'll do this again, I promise. This is just the beginning. On the drive back to Boston, Mom dozes in the passenger seat while David and I talk quietly. What do you think? He asks. About Helen? About all of it? I consider the question carefully. I think I'm incredibly lucky, I say finally, to have been born to a woman brave enough to give me up, then raised by parents loving enough to make me their own, and to have a brother stubborn enough to fight with me, but wise enough to make peace. David smiles, reaching forward to squeeze my shoulder. You know, for an adopted kid, you're a pretty decent Mitchell. I laugh, the last of the tension between us dissolving. And for a biological Mitchell, you're not half bad yourself. 2 weeks later, David and I meet with Mr. Hartman to finalize the details of Dad's estate. As agreed, David will take responsibility for the Mitchell family papers, creating an archive to be eventually donated to the Cambridge Historical Society. I will retain ownership of the house, with Mom continuing to live there, and David and his family welcome any time. Your father would be pleased, Mr. Hartman says as we sign the last of the documents. He always believed you two were stronger together than apart. After the meeting, David and I walk through Harvard Square, past the bookstores and cafes of our childhood. I'm sorry, he says suddenly, stopping to face me, for everything I said when I found out about the adoption, for trying to take away your inheritance, for making you feel, even for a moment, like you weren't really my sister. I know. I say simply, it's okay. It's not, he insists, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I smile, linking my arm through his. Just be my brother. That's all I've ever wanted. We continue walking, two Mitchells bound not by blood but by something stronger, by choice, by shared history, by love that transcends biology. Later that evening, I sit in Dad's study, my study now, I suppose, looking through the photo album Helen gave me. I see echoes of myself in her teenage face, glimpses of my mannerisms in photos of half-siblings I've yet to meet. These connections are real, undeniable parts of who I am. But as I close the album and glance around the room, at Dad's books lining the shelves, at the graduation photos Mom insisted on displaying, at the childhood drawings she had framed, I know with absolute certainty who I am and where I belong. I am Sarah Mitchell, daughter of Thomas and Eleanor, sister to David. I carry Helen Graham's genes and Michael Whitley's DNA, but I carry the Mitchells' values, their love, their legacy. I was not born into this family. I was chosen for it. And in the choosing, I became something unique. A bridge between worlds. A living testament to the truth that family is not just something you're born into, but something you build, choice by choice, day by day, love by love. Outside, the lights of Cambridge twinkle in the gathering darkness. In the kitchen, Mom is preparing dinner, the familiar sounds of home wrapping around me like an embrace. Tomorrow, I will return to the hospital, to the children who need me. Next weekend, David will bring his family for a visit. In a month, I will meet Helen again, perhaps her children as well. My life stretches before me, richer and more complex than before, expanded by truth rather than diminished by it. I am not just one thing, Mitchell or Graham, adopted or biological. I am all of these things and more. I am the sum of every love that has shaped me, every choice that has formed me, every truth that has freed me. And in that knowledge, I am finally completely home.